Happy Friday, everybody. Let me fix my camera a little bit. Happy Friday. Happy cocktail time. All right. Let's see who's here. Happy Friday. You made it. I feel like I'm crooked. Am I crooked? I'm not going to be looking at myself. I'm going to be looking at your comments. Happy Friday. If there's a delay. Heather, great to see you. Heather, I have got to see you in person. This is crazy. Kira, I have got to see you in person. This is crazy. It is so windy. Cheers, my dears. I'm waiting for my cocktail and I'm going to do it. It is so windy today. If you notice, I am in the corner of the living room. I'm in my roost, like a little gargoyle. It is crazy in Connecticut. I don't know about where you are, but it is like beautiful, balmy, warm weather. But it's like Wizard of Oz type wind out, crazy wind outside. And I was all ensconced in my usual place. This is still crooked, isn't it? In my studio space and ready to blow. And I was working on work and the building started shaking so much with every gust of wind. It was that crazy thing again with like the crazy wind, like when I was on Cape May last weekend with my mom. Crazy slamming of wind and shaking, trembling, vibrating, rumbling, worrying. And I noticed that all the ceiling tiles on the drop ceiling had moved. It was crazy. So it was time to go. It was definitely time for me to go. I get too nervous about things like that. Thank you so much. I am ready to, thank you so much. I am ready to do cheers, my dears. It looks dangerously full. Cheers, my dears. Happy Friday. Mm, mm. Catherine, I was just thinking about you, wondering where you were, because I haven't seen you for a while. I saw Donna in Zoom, and I was hoping everything was all right with you. Happy Friday. Happy Friday, everybody. Let's see who else is here. Gives me a chance to get a couple of sips in. This is dangerous, huh? Mm. Yeah, my mom says, hey, Mom. In the land of gusts and rain showers, too. In Granby, praying the winds don't get any stronger. That's what I was thinking. I was starting to wonder, where my studio is a place where there have been like 2 tornadoes in very, very recent years, like maybe in the same year even. It is like leveled, like devastated. It looks like science fiction. It's just a crazy landscape. So I was thinking with the ceiling tiles on the shimmy shimmy and everything shaking, it was time to go. Christine, happy Friday. Windy night also in Brockport. We're all feeling it. The worst thing about it, not the ceiling tiles, but the way that outside the sky went like blue to black and then like bright again, almost like a light switch had gone on and off. I thought I thought that can't be good. Linda, happy Friday. How are you? It was so fun Zooming yesterday. Kira says blew our temporary greenhouse down. Oh, good idea. Everybody's windy. Look at that. We're having a thing. Happy Friday, Sheila. Keep your eyes open. Ooh, I will keep my eyes open. I love that. Oh, Robin, cheers, my dears. Cheers in Wisconsin. We had such a fun Zoom yesterday. We stayed. I'm in crazy light right now. I'm sorry. I'm getting X-rayed by the sun. This is just a moment when the clouds parted, and I'm getting X-rayed by the sun. All crazy Stephen King face. But we had such a fun Zoom yesterday. We did a really long Zoom, and we were silly and had fun and saw some projects in the works. And it's great to see April's piece again. She's doing a real personal, tall piece, like a big climbing landscape. It's full of symbols and meaning, and it is so cool. Everybody's working on very different projects, and it's so much fun. I was working on my mermaid over here. So far, she's called Mermaid. She's listed, and the link to her at the Ribbon Candy Hooking Store is in the description of this video, along with 3 or 4 other ones that I'm going to show you a little bit later. But I can't think of a better name for her than Mermaid. So if you can think of a better name for her, do you think you can put that blind down? It's like a true X-ray. Like they're going to see bones instead of cardigan. Thank you. What was I just saying? This is it. This is the beginning for me, and I'm already losing my mind. Oh, if you can think of a better name for this mermaid, I would really appreciate it. Perfect. Because I love her, and I love her dark, light, dull, bright, and I love her Angelica hair, and more on that in coffee time this week, because that's going to be a big breakthrough for us, I think, is terms of a product, this very high foil color. But, you know, she's got all this beautiful seaweed. I'm nowhere near done, and I haven't done the fish yet here. I think I'm going to take Kira's advice and do the fish in the lime green, because I'm not much of a goldfish yellow person. But I'm running some other colors around and trying some stuff out. Determined to get my tomato red. Uh-oh, I'm not plugged. It's not reaching. And the battery's about to shut the computer off. See, this is why I like to be at my studio, because everything is a bit tough at home. I would love to get that tomato red in. So anyway, if you can help me think of an idea, even if it's a crazy one for her name, I would love it, because Mermaid seems very, very bland, doesn't it? Let's see who else. Kirsten. Hey, Kirsten, how are you? Linda B, Heather. All right, lots of buddies here. Sheila. Tina. Happy Friday, Tina. Cheers. Good to see you. Oh, your knitting group meets on Thursdays now. Darn. Was that intended, that pun? The darn, like darn the socks? Oh, that's such a bummer, Catherine. We're going to have to start doing, I've been thinking about doing a second Zoom at least every other week where we can do something in the weekend. I also thought about running a class just for fun, just to see in the morning, like first thing in the morning. Just try one class first thing in the morning. The reason I'm thinking about it is because there's so many viewers and shoppers who are in England, and that's 7 hours later, and even further. I mean, I can't accommodate, unfortunately, like Australia, and I love that those people are tuning in, but that is a very big time difference and season altogether, right? But I'd love to try something in the morning and see how many people in other places who are always shopping and tuning in would like that, or like to at least Zoom first thing in the morning. And maybe people here are too. Maybe you're crazy and you're like me and you're up at 5:30 and you're ready to go, and you don't care if you've got makeup on or not. You're just ready to start talking about hooking and working on projects. Might be something. Joy, cheers. Good to see you. Chrissy, cheers. Good to see you, Chrissy. Under the couch, I found the Jekyll Island pattern that I had for you, so I just sent it. I am so sorry. I thought it was with your last package, but it was under the couch. So that is on the way to you. That is well on the way now. I'm so sorry about that. I know you want to get that. I don't want you to think I forgot, but I just did forget and lose it. I haven't been super, super great lately. Relda, good to see you, and it was great to Zoom with you yesterday too. Super funny Zooming. Karen, good to see you. Oh, Lorelei is a great name for the mermaid. You know what? I think I'm going to take it. I love it. That's a great name for the mermaid, and it reminds me of my all-time favorite. Thank you, Jennifer. It reminds me of my all-time favorite TV show. Do you know what it is with the two Lorelei's? I'm going to keep that as a cliffhanger for a minute and see who knows what it is before I give it away. It's not trivia night, but I bet you know. It's my all-time favorite. Lots of buddies on tonight. Sharon, hello. Good to see you. All right. Well, you know what? Let me take one more sip. I feel like I have a really good show tonight. It's such a funny, sort of old-fashioned show, and it seems like every time, just covering stuff up here mostly, every time I'm in this seat, in this room, I tend to do episodes that are very heavy history, sort of more academic than fun, but I hope it can be both. And whoop, whoop. Oh, good, Jennifer. William Winthrop Kent. Great books. I hope so. They're so old and they're so different, and I have been digging in like crazy, and they are right up my street. I bet they're up your street too. There's a lot to be said, so let's get going. One more sip. By the way, just reminding everybody, a bunch of people have signed up for the Sunday Magdalena class, drawing like Magdalena, Brian or Eby. I've been saying Ebby, and it's actually Eby, so I'm going to try to fix that starting from now on. And that is the first in a series of monthly design classes. This, she is such an early rug hooking artist. I'm using that word very strongly and intentionally. There's lots of reasons why I'm starting with her. And I think the Wednesday class was great, and I think the Sunday class is going to be great. If you can catch the whole series, I'm going to be doing it every month, hopefully from now until death. And I hope that is very far away. So I just have so many ideas for artists. I don't see how, being already 49, how I'm going to get them all in. So that is coming up on Sunday. So that is like a last chance cafe kind of an announcement. And there's nothing gets mailed. It's some templates are downloaded, so you can still do that. And then next month I'll be doing designing like Matisse. So heading more toward fine art, but still in rug design, still with rug designing in mind. Um, I'm long in the tooth tonight, 2 shot today, and kind of off. So you'll listen and enjoy. Ralda, that sounds great. That sounds good enough for me. You know, these William Winthrop Kent books are fantastic. There are moments that I have to say the tone is a little bit, I don't want to say condescending. I'm going to say something cute like high horse. The tone is a little bit high horse sometimes. And part of it, I would say, is the time. Southern Soil. Hi, y'all. Good to see you. Welcome and happy Friday night. And cheers, my dears. Happy Friday. Gave me another reason to take a sip. You know, books from this, I read a lot of books from the 1920s. I really do. When I was in grad school, oh, thanks, Joy. I loved it too. I loved it. The Magdalena class on Wednesday. When I was in grad school, one of my huge things that I was doing Shakespeare and I was doing English literature, and I had a focus on Victorian literature. And so I've read a lot of older books, and I've read a lot of older authors, and I've read fiction and nonfiction and first person and not. Some books are a bit more high horse than others. This is pretty much as high horse as it gets. That is not a derogatory review. It's just, as I go along tonight, take everything with a grain of salt, because we're going to remember that this is actually I think this one's 1930. Let me check. This is a third edition that I've got in my hand. It's such an attractive cover. 1930, so not 1920. We did cover 2 1920 books in past coffee times and cocktail times. You know, William Winthrop Kent is a very well-educated person. Very well-educated. He's an architect. He's a successful architect. He's class. This is old-time class. He's very well-educated. His vocabulary is excellent. He's very astute. Sometimes the things that he says sound a little bit harsh, and I'm going to just put that down to it being an older book. Although some of my favorite books are written in this period, like the Angela Thirkell books, you know, a lot of early Barbara Pym, some of the early 20th century books overlap with his life and are a completely different tone. So I'm going to be really careful about what I read, and I'm going to be really careful to qualify when something sounds really harsh. I'm not going to be reading any excerpts that are more than a little bit sort of inappropriate in terms of language. You know, we use different language. We're a lot more sensitive these days. It's not a particularly insensitive book, but there are moments. Now, The Hook Drug is the first book, and there is more in here than I can do in one night, and probably in one life, but certainly in one night. I had this one out because I had this crazy sort of pipe dream that we'd also be looking at rare. Oh, hey, Becky. It's windy there too, right? What's going on? I mean, seriously, are there like alien spaceships like circling above us, creating some kind of a wind warp or something? It's all crazy everywhere. It's weird that it's so windy in so many places. I understand wind systems are interconnected, but it's a lot of wind, right? Anyway, we're definitely not going to get to Rare Hook Drugs or the third one today, mostly because I couldn't find it. It's somewhere. But we're definitely going to hit this hard, and I have been enjoying it immensely. This book, The Hook Drug, ties in so well with what we were doing on Coffee Time this past week. We were concluding sort of the main mission rugs in Alice Peasley, and we transitioned to the amazing book by Mildred Cole Pellido, I think it was called Maine Hook Drugs, or Hook Drugs in Maine, 1938 to 1940. And we will return to that in Coffee Time this coming week. That was like the triple cherry machine. You kept pulling it and it kept giving out gold. But, you know, in that book, to transition, kind of segue into our evening, she was talking about research and sort of scholarship within rug hooking, and how over the years, as we have come to learn more and know more, we have made corrections, as you do with every aspect of history, right? It is impossible to know at the beginning the full picture. We still don't know the full picture. In 100 years, people will be saying, what were they talking about in 2021? because they will know so much more by then, and they will have unearthed so much more, made that many more connections, and figured that many more brilliant things out, just like Mildred does in the book. In that one episode we did, the last episode of Coffee Time, the two things that she uncovered, the fact that, and I truly believe that she's correct, and that she is the author of this discovery, I truly believe she's right in saying that there is no such thing as an Akkadian rug, and that they were all Waldoboro rugs all along. I truly believe that that's true. And I also have to say, I truly believe that her research, and having looked at thousands and thousands of rugs that are considered hearth rugs, that only one that she ever saw in her vast survey had any sort of spark damage on it. She didn't believe that they were actually being used as hearth rugs. Shaped, in front of the hearth, yes, but not during a roaring fire. So I feel that just in the first pages of that book, she made two discoveries that were, if you're going to come and make a cameo appearance, make sure that your skirt is covering your crotch. Yep, okay. All right, we're good. We're good. Here she is. Here she is. Jocelyn, the co-star, the artist, the slime maker. You have been making a lot of slime today, huh?
Yeah. Oh, it's my mic down there.
Yeah, that's your mic. Yeah, she's such a camera pig, isn't she? She's starting early. Christine, I got my Hooked Rugs in Maine book today. Ordered it from Goodwill. Oh my gosh, it's signed from Mildred. That's great. Oh, how fun. I'm so glad you got it. I hope you're going to enjoy it so much. You're going to take it to bed tonight, right? It's the perfect bedtime book. It is so exciting. More, like I said the other day, more exciting than the Da Vinci Code. Keep your legs off the camera. She's a wild lady, and I don't know if she has her modesty pants on. You know those little shorts. Not. You do not have your modesty pants on. Are you gonna be working on any new yarn color collections for us?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have any visions? Okay, you just kicked the thing, which affects the camera. This is not a footrest. Oh, Gami says, "Hey, Joss." Chrissy says, "Hey, Joss." Oh, you're getting a wave. You're getting a wave from Robin. And Christine.
Did someone get a sticker?
Yeah, you're getting some stickers. Look at Linda gives you a hi. Everybody's happy to see you. It's Friday night and you a little thing. You a cute little thing. She's been working on her slime. We made our polymer charms, our polymer charm necklace the other night, right? You want to get some of your charms to show?
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of new yarn collections, sorry, detour when child enters, another thing about being at home. Then I'm working on a new yarn set that will come out. It won't come out this weekend because it's too busy. It'll come out next week. It is going to be based on you. I'm sure that you are familiar with the beautiful vintage line of kitchenware called Fiesta Ware. It is going to be based on Fiesta Ware. The next yarn set I'm putting out within the next few days is going to be called Fiesta Ware. And all those beautiful, delicious celery, sage, tomato colors that you're thinking of, they are all part of the Fiesta Ware collection. So to be continued. You want to show some of your... She's just going to show.
Pringle.
She made a Pringle charm out of polymer clay. Such a cuddle bug, I know.
A donut.
Oh, Kira said she made a donut. Yeah, this is her donut. Let's show it right here. Kira says she has your jam sandwich on her water bottle.
That's cool.
That's cool.
I have
Mama made a lollipop.
I have 2 hearts.
2 hearts, yep. Mama made this for luck. You know, when it's 11 o'clock, you got to do some stupid stuff, right?
And I made a cheeseburger.
You made a cheeseburger. We're trading charms. I'm going to get the cheeseburger. Mama made this one too. Can you tell Mama gets hungry when it's like 11 o'clock at night? A Cinnabon. Oh, Jossie, I got to show your favorite, and then I'm going to do stuff with rugs. Peas in a pod. This is Joss's least favorite, but I absolutely love peas in a pod. Mama made a little ice cream cone for Jossie too inside a waffle cone.
Oh, and my dad made a goblin.
Yep, he made a goblin. That one showed us all up. That's a crazy one. All right, I got to do rug stuff now. Thanks, Christine. They're all beautiful, Joss. Yep.
Oh, wait, I forgot my flower.
Okay, one more. Nice flower. Unfortunately, the glaze that was included in this very expensive set was expired, and it was just a jar of garbage because we couldn't use it at all. Okay, let me do my show, honey. Say bye to your viewers. We get rid of these charms. Okay, sorry about that. Where was I? She hasn't seen you for a while, so she's very excited, obviously. It was fun. So, you know, when I got into this book, I was thinking about Mildred having said, you know, that there are eras in the 3 Kent books. And, you know, I'm not even going to say that they're eras. There is information that he gathered And he gathered it in the best way that he could in 1930, right, by writing letters to people, to random people who he thought were good people. And we're going to talk about that in this time. He did the best he could with the resources that he had. Obviously, no internet, goes without being said. He says, he does everything right, but some of these wrong conclusions are just beyond his control or his capability. Nothing sloppy about the work in his 3 books at all. Nothing sloppy at all. But some of the information over time proved to be not right, or not quite right. Oh, thanks, Linda. But it is still a glorious book. And I'll tell you what, on the first page, it's at one of the pre-pages, one of the end papers, he's thanking, the thanks is to those, which I think is a quite nice way of saying, thank you, or appreciating the people who've helped him. He names a lot of people who are really important to rug hooking at this time. These are all names that we know. There's quite a few people, many that I don't know, that I'm guessing are collectors, gallery owners, or people who run the rug departments at department stores, because that was one of his big connections too. He gives a huge thanks to Helen Albee, who we had an episode about. If you remember, she was based in New Hampshire right around the same time, a contemporary of William Winthrop Kent's, and her special area of interest was Native American art. And as a result, she designed tons of rugs that had Native American motifs. Unfortunately, there's hardly any image of these available online. And unfortunately, her book, which is a real nugget in terms of information, has no images, like no images, and no color. I think there's one black and white out of focus image, but that is it. The internet is better with its 3 photos. So more to be said and researched on Helen Albee, but we know the name, and we know that her sort of group of people who are working on Native American designs, that was an important chapter in rug hooking. And Teddy, I'm recording. William Winthrop Kent was right in the pulse of that. He was a friend of hers, he knew her, and he consulted her in writing this book. Ralph Burnham, right? Ipswich, Massachusetts, Ralph Burnham, the guy who had an antique store, and he got really turned on to rug hooking. It was a real passion for him, but he also started advertising that he could repair hooked rugs, and people would send him their hooked rugs. He would repair them, get paid for that, but in the meantime, he would take a copy of the design, and then he would have the design remade by people who worked for him. So he was literally copying the design, because that was not a thing then. Now, it would be a thing now if you took original rugs and you copied them without consulting the artist, or trying to figure out who the original artist was. That would be a huge problem, particularly on Facebook. But, at that time it wasn't. And thank God he did do that, because if he hadn't, hundreds and hundreds of designs that he saved by peeling them off, literally, not paper-wise, peeling them off original rugs that belonged to these very wealthy people. Hey, Roger. So, all of these people, this is another contributor. He's got a long list of people who, again, are collectors, and he thanks B. Altman. Remember the department store B. Altman? One of the really famous ones. I think it featured in, what was that show about? Oh, God, the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel or something. She worked at B. Altman. But this book, and as we go on, you'll see what I mean. He talks quite a bit about relationships with people in department stores, because charmingly enough, one of my great passions, rug hooking, and second is defunct department stores. All of these old department stores had not only an antiques department in the department store, not only a beautiful tea room that had unique recipes, right? And if you remember the old department stores, you remember even as a kid going to the old tea rooms. Not only that, but they had travel agencies. They had everything inside a department store. It was just such an Oz, such a destination. But they always had a rug department, and some of the rugs were new, loomed rugs that they were getting from other parts of the world, but always there were rugs that were antiques. And again, on Coffee Time, we've talked about this a lot, how people like Alice Peasley with the Maine Mission rugs, she got, approached by department stores, but what they were asking in terms of like their cut was always so exorbitant that she felt just not worth it. They were selling these rugs like this. She didn't need another outlet for sales. She didn't need to do any further marketing. They were selling out every year. But other people were selling to department stores original handmade designs and also commercial pattern designs. Marks and Sparks, right, Kira? Marks and Spencer. Oh, I remember when I lived in England, that was just one of those great places with the grocery store inside and everything. I think there's some Marks and Spencers here now, right, in the U.S.? I might need a refill already. This is a miniature glass. I mean, come on, that's a mini. Is that a miniature glass? Now, when I got into this, thank you so much. I'm super high maintenance when I'm at home. When I got into this book, I again was a little tripped up by the tone, because you know all the books that I cover in Coffee Time, I really choose books that I feel like I'm in love with the author. I'm falling in love again. You know, such the tone so encouraging. Keep going. You're doing great. Whatever you're doing, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing it. Great. Keep going. This book has more of that sort of dated feel to it. So if you're looking for a feel-good read to make you feel good about your hooking and your approach and what you're doing, this isn't a feel-good read. What this is a book that is filled with rare and amazing, is that wine? Oh, I'm switching it up already, double fisting it already. This is a book that is filled with rare illustrations and examples of rugs that you just don't see in any other place, not even in the Joel and Kate Kopp book. This is really, really, thank you, Roger. This is really, really a compilation. This is an academic work. This is something that he synthesized, gathered, put together. Again, him being an architect, it is very clear that he's detail-oriented. He has done his research, his footwork, his everything. And he has come up with 3 marvelous books, this being the first one. But it is not a feel-good book. It is a book that makes you second-guess yourself many, many times. Having said that, let's dig in, because it is filled with information and inspiration. One more sip. All right. Hey, it's Friday, right? So in the first chapters, chapter 1, gotta switch my glasses now, so I won't see you as well in your comments, but I'll see the book better. In chapter 1, he's talking about charm. Now, this is one of these subjects. He has a little bit of a hard time describing folk art, describing hooked rugs as folk art. And the reason why, I think, is because people are not talking about hooked rugs as being folk art yet. It is just the beginning of the surge of interest in, again, 1930. This is like the year after the Great Depression. This is the pits of popularity in terms of rug hooking. This is the bottom. This is like there was a wave of interest and it went right down, and because people just don't have the money and people are not traveling to places, summer communities or even the city, where you're able to buy hooked rugs at department stores or in little towns in Maine or in Canada. People are just not traveling and they're not being bought, and so therefore in a couple of years they're not going to be made anymore. And the pendulum will swing and there will be no interest in hooked rugs. But again, it will come back, as pendulums always do. So he's trying to describe the charm of rug hooking in chapter 1. He's getting us in, he's walking us into the mood of the woman, that proverbial woman in front of the hearth, who's got a piece of charcoal in her hand, and she's about to scratch an original design from her heart onto some homespun linen or maybe a potato sack. And he describes that, he attempts to describe that in several ways, but the best way he gets there is by saying that he read a letter that was from somebody in Tennessee to the rural New Yorker, and it was hailing farm dwellers. We use the word dwellers a lot in this book, and it said, the woman who wrote the letter from Tennessee said, and this is her letter, "I enjoy making my own designs. I never knew how to sing or paint or draw. No way to express myself, only by hoeing, washing, ironing, patching, etc. And while I never hope to accomplish anything extraordinary, I do love to plan out and execute these rugs that are a bit of myself, a blind groping after something beautiful. But when one is finished, it is a disappointment. The colors don't blend, or some are too glaring. but I keep on trying. Now, it is amazing to me that he included that in the first chapter, because that doesn't seem to be his overarching sentiment toward sort of naive, untrained people making rugs. But that is a beautiful quote, and that is the heart of the craft. And I'm very happy that he included that, because it would be hard to go back into microfiche and find that letter from Tennessee at this point in life, right? At this point where we are. So he says, that this letter, he's talking about the romantic quality of it. And he says that in the great flock of designs from this art, there are many ugly ducklings. It could not be otherwise when so many untutored minds and hands have to do with it. Crude indeed are the efforts of many of the thousands of tireless workers in farm and hamlet, here and abroad, but lovely are the works of the most gifted ones. Indeed, we may call some American specimens superb, for they are not only beautiful, but new and original contributions to the art of the world that reveal often the personality of the maker. Now, this excerpt gives me an insight into what William likes. So we're not talking at this point about, again, rugs being folk art. So we're not saying this rug is not expertly done. There are lots of things missing that we like to see in folk art, but nonetheless, it has charm. It certainly maintains or expresses the character, the personality, the heart of the maker. He's a little bit more harsh in looking at a rug and saying, it's an ugly duckling. And I think that's probably because he's an artist and an architect, and he comes from a class where he's seen a lot of great art. And since we aren't talking about folk art as being quality, he still thinks of it as sort of peasant art, and he will use that expression many times. So again, grain of salt. I'm putting a filter on this. I'm putting a sort of filmy, a soap opera film across it, because we have to remember when this book was written and from the sort of point of view that it's written. There's a lot of talk about ugly ducklings, but nonetheless, you also have to take into account many things. His personal taste, number one. Number two, the rugs that even he is looking at in 1930 are rugs that could be from 1830 and could have significant damage, water damage, foot damage, dirt damage, sun damage, fading, lots of different things that could have over time changed the overall look of the rug. So while he as an architect and an artist is looking for something that shows, hits all of the keynotes of fine art, right, to make the eye say, yes, success, the rug might have actually physically lost some of these qualities and properties over time. So that's also a wild card. It's very hard to say if what he's looking at is what he sees, if you see what I mean. So again, grain of salt. He goes on to say, some people, rightly or wrongly, are tired of the average modern Oriental rug, in which patterns of great historic value have been through the years so often ignorantly transplanted into meaningless shapes and colors by successive generations of untaught and weary workers, that now the significance of the pattern and color has been almost lost. So it's passages like that that are a little bit stomach crampy. So, okay, so he's talking about the huge trend and the huge amount of early rugs that are copies of Oriental rugs, because obviously people see their neighbors have an Oriental rug that came from a boat that arrived at the dock that their neighbor could afford but they couldn't afford, and they see the style of it and they've seen it before and it's sort of in their head, and they make a copy of it and it's not quite right. So he would sort of find offense with these kinds of rugs because they're not good copies. And of course, he, being the class that he is and being as well traveled as he is, will already know the significance, the symbolism, and the meaning of even the colors, not even the symbols and the shapes, but the colors in an Oriental rug. But the average person doesn't. They are just shape driven. If it has a squiggle, it gets a squiggle. If it has a scroll, there's a scroll. If it has a blue tree, there's a blue tree. But that's as far as it goes for most people. You know, in the 19th century, the rugs that he's looking at, that's about as far as it goes into information before approaching the project. Now, I want to show you the rug of the woman from Tennessee who sent that letter to the New Yorker. Let me see if I can get it. Now this is a very old book, and the photos are not super high quality. So if you see what I'm seeing, it's not in quality, it's not in total focus to begin with, but that is the rug that she made in Tennessee. This must have been the best rug that she made, because you remember her saying that every time she makes a rug, she's disappointed, and she thought it would kind of turn out better, but she keeps trying. So the fact that this is the one that she sent to the New Yorker, I would assume that this was the one that she considered was her best rug. I'm not saying it's not a great rug. She's done some things here that, from a design point of view, she's paying attention. She's given us, it's the top rug. She's given us 3 flowers in the center because, as you know, everybody has always said all through time, do not do things in twos. Do not do things in pairs. Do things in an odd number. It creates more interest. She put all 3 flowers right smack in a horizontal row. Typically, when you see 3 flowers, they're a little bit staggered for interest, but she did 3 in a row. I think it is still beautiful. And she put 4 flowers in the corners. You see the heart in this piece. It's oozing heart. I'm thinking of Joss and her slime. But, it's like there's sunflowers in the corners. She attempted to sort of outline and sort of pinprick some little lines in the leaves of the flowers. And she gave it a dark ground. And in the center medallion where she put her odd number of flowers and lots of leaf and foliage behind, she did a kind of marble cake or mixed background, which she must have also noticed was a popular thing. So, it almost makes me want to cry. Good for her. What a beautiful, I don't want to say effort because that sounds patronizing. I would buy this rug in a second. And if I knew that she had written that letter from Tennessee to the New Yorker with that sort of expression in her heart, I wish I could do better. This is the best I can do, but I keep trying. It's like I would give an arm for that rug, knowing that part of the story. William Winthrop Kent goes on to say that the really old Oriental rugs show deep artistic feeling and an inspired knowledge. It was not enough for the designers that a rug should be merely containing complementary colors with hackneyed patterns, but themes of tone and harmony and great richness were sought and attained by the most inspired workers only. In other words, the people who made the Oriental rugs that were the inspiration for people who would be later copying the Oriental rugs, somehow he's claiming, and I do take exception to this, sometimes he's claiming that those people were so much more artistically inspired and inclined that they somehow magically created work with hackneyed patterns and themes and harmony, and created a tone based on instinct that was so different than people could do without all of this inspiration, training, and hackneyed patterns. Those are the passages, I have to admit, that really get to me, because it's a little bit condescending. He's looked at so many rugs at this point. I just wish that his approach to looking at rugs that weren't perfectly polished was a little bit more forgiving, but it is what it is. There's still a lot of great information in this book. Now, he does show us a huge number of interesting rugs. The first chapters are going to begin, these are going to be the problematic chapters in terms of rug hooking history, because the first chapters are about the origins of rug hooking, and we know for certain that he jumped to some conclusions and he made some assumptions that turned out to not be true. Again, it's not sloppy work, it's fair assumptions with the knowledge, deductions with the knowledge that he had that were perfectly sensible, but that have turned out over time to not be true. 50-50, it could have gone either way, right? So he talks a lot in the early pages about like Coptic rugs, really ancient rugs, and they are not hooked rugs. We now know they are not hooked rugs. They are rugs made in other ways, but certainly not with a rug hook. So this is all stuff that we have updated. Oh, thanks, Roger. I love doing it. It's super fun. Sharing is super fun. That's right, Sheila. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And like everything in life, I think, my sort of ratio for what my eye likes and what my heart likes, everything is so emotional for me when I choose art or something for the wall or even a pattern to hook. It's so emotional for me. The balance for me is going to be different than the balance for you. So I love folk art. I love naive. I love when perspective and proportion is off. I love it when the wrong things are big and the big things are small. I love that. I love that more than the average person. Somebody else, for them, like levels on an old-time stereo, some of their levels are going to be up where mine are more down. You know, everybody's going to have different. Oh, okay. Lori, thank you. Thank you, Lori. Sorry. Just got a note. Thank you. Everybody's levels are different. So, having said that, you know, your taste, my taste, William's taste, we're all going to have different taste. I think the main thing about this book is he's not looking at hooked rugs as folk art, and he's looking at them in terms of their artistic integrity and quality. And since that's the case, it's going to be hard, isn't it? Because they are folk art. It's going to be hard. It's going to create kind of a barrier between him and the people that he's describing and the rugs that he's describing just automatically. And it's not his own fault. It's because these rugs are primitive and they are made by people who are not trained. So these early chapters are devoted to information that we know now to not be true. He even describes in the early pages how he's in sort of close consultation with Helen Albee, the Native American, particularly the Abenaki rugs, and how her feeling was, you know, she brought to his attention some textiles at different museums and, you know, Egyptian, Coptic, this kind of thing from the Metropolitan Museum in Art, and directed him to examples of ancient rug hooking. So they both at that time believed that these rugs were done by hooking. They were at a museum looking at textiles, and it looked like something that they were both very familiar with in the 20th century, but it wasn't. It was things done with different tools. And we've said many times in coffee time, it's very, very hard to tell the difference between a rug that is made with a needle, for example, and a rug that is made with a hook. And certainly you can't do that from, you know, several feet away in glass in a museum. But with the information that they have and with what they're looking at, they're doing the best they can to assimilate all of these clues. So he's working with Helen Albee on this book, but they're working on the origins of rug hooking, which again turns out to not be exactly right. Now, meanwhile, while the book has some dated information, he scatters through the book prolific amounts of early examples of hooked rugs. This is one of them, and this is one that I put on Ribbon Candy Hooking tonight. This is available tonight, I think. I thought this was an exceptionally beautiful rug. Let me describe it to you first. Early American floral hooked rug, striated brown field. So this will be what we often call the marble cake background, the sort of different shades of dark brown going to like an ivory or cream. Occupied by a jardinier and a loose pink and crimson floral design. Triangular corners of mosaic in crimson, blue, ivory, and black. So a lot of primary colors in this piece, which include brown. Again, this is a black and white book, and these are very old photos. This top piece here is what I'm talking about. I think this is an exceptional piece, and that's the reason why I chose to make it available. I love the fact that, now you could go in 100 different directions with this, but I love the fact that the jardinier that he's describing, the flower pot, it has a sort of reverse silhouette. The pot is black with a white design. You usually see the opposite. So it's light on dark. He's got this, well, the artist has done a marble cake border that he's calling mosaic. This is really marble cake, and so is this. This is just more brown. This is more black or antique black. And a sort of weird scattering of flowers, many of them in the vase, several of them out of the vase. What does it mean? Is it purely for design and balance? I'm recording. Or does it mean something? Does anybody know? It's time for the trampoline with the kids. We have the trampoline in the back. I bought a very expensive trampoline, which is meant to last us at least one summer. And I was also forced by Jocelyn to buy a fog machine. And it has LED lights. So they are now entering the phase of the night that is go into the trampoline, zip the side of the trampoline up, position the fog machine, and let it rip. And hopefully it lasts until the rest of coffee time. And they'll be jumping so fast the mosquitoes won't get them, I don't think. But I think that's an extraordinary composition. You know, when you think about composition and what you can do, when you think about doing a very simple design like a flower pot, tipping it into a diamond, right? So you're setting a shape within a shape, a story within a story, a play within a play. You know, it's going to create interest. It's going to give you lots of possible combos of color. You can, I'm sure, imagine doing this in brown, black, and primary colors like the artist did. I could also imagine doing it in crazy Florida colors, Caribbean colors, Bahamas colors. I could picture it in neon colors. I could picture it in Cape facet colors with oranges, pinks, purples, and greens. There's so many ways you can go with a simple design like that. It's a very strong design being framed out in 2 different shapes. So you know that's going to be a home run no matter what colors you choose. So, you know, he is showing us through this book some extraordinary examples of some early rugs. This isn't a good example, but this is the rug a little bit bigger up. I was just shaping it out to figure out what I was going to cut and what I was going to leave. But that's there. You'll see it. It's in a link in this video if you're interested. I think I did 4 antique rugs from the commentary tonight that are, of course, copyright free because of their age. So you are welcome to do them directly from the book, too. This sounds very W.W. Kent, but I just translated them because there was a lot of lines, and you have to sort of choose as you go along what you want to keep and what can go. This book is rich in illustration. All of his early, I just have to show you these 2 too. Every page has got at least 2 designs. If you look at this top design, again, very unusual, very unusual. You know, this is Pearl McGowan's just getting warmed up at this point, right? She will be, for the next 30, 40 years, collecting early American rug designs. William Winthrop Kent is doing this way, way earlier. He's been collecting. And he's been in touch with Ralph Burnham, who, of course, has also been collecting. Now, these are not designs that we find in the McGowan catalog. This is really unusual, a sort of egg-shaped oval, very, very fat on the sides. Only 2 tiny scrolls, very filigree top and bottom. In the center, flowers that have a sort of poinsettia fern quality. And if you can see, the border also within the central design has a scroll that is really stylized and shaped, right? It's sort of stretched. It doesn't go uniformly around like a frame. It's sort of stretched. And also, again, on the corners, the striations or the marble cake, really unusual composition. I mean, it looks at first glance like any old rug with flowers and a scroll, but look at it again. It's really not, is it? It's really not. Now, this one down here, again, can you think of the last time you saw a rug that looked like this? Again, look at how effective the diamond is, you know, within the sort of hearthrug shape. Look at these very stylized leaves. How simple is this? There is one small sprig of a branch stretching one way. Its companion is stretching the other way. They're meeting in the middle with 2 big buds. There are 2 other buds. There are 4 buds total in this picture in a scattering of very simple leaves. But this is not underdone. This is not overdone. This is like 3 bears, Goldilocks, just right. What a great composition. I didn't do that one. I could do that one. You're welcome to do it yourself, of course. You don't need me to do it. But, I mean, extraordinarily simple. But remember, simple is hard. Simple is hard. Let me make sure I'm up to date with you all here. So, you know, again, this is just an example. Let me take one sip to wet my whistle. Again, harking back to the last episode of Coffee Time, looking at the reed rug, which is a yarn-stitched rug, the yarn-stitched reed rug, if you remember that, it is made with a needle and thread by inserting either like a reed or a knitting needle and then stitching the loops around it, pulling the needle or the reed out and getting perfectly uniform rows of loops. That is what the reed rug is. Let me show you an example. Because he is calling this a hooked rug. This is clipped too, so the loops are clipped. On the pile, the loops are clipped, so it looks a little bit like a latch because it's not looped, it's clipped. So this is the front, but this is the back. And I mean, this is not the same rug, but this is certainly identical to the rug that Mildred Cole Pelladeau gives us in the Hooked Rugs in Maine book. This is exactly. See if I can come a little bit closer. If you can see those little stitches, that is not the back of wool strips. That is the back of a reed rug, 1000%. So that's just interesting because at this point, it's not just William Winthrop Kent, it's everybody. Nobody has made the sort of distinction between sewn rugs, which include yarn rugs, and hooked rugs. So there's no reason why he should know that this is not a hooked rug, but this is not a hooked rug. And there's going to be lots of examples of this in this book. Let me show you a couple more examples before I do more commentary. This one is just crazy in my mind. I'm going to see if I can get a little bit closer. Let me see.
It's a tiny plate in the book, but it looks like, you know, in school when they had you cut out paper snowflakes. It looks a little bit like that and a little bit like sort of crocheted matacassars, like that kind of thing. I just thought that was an extraordinary composition with all of those snowflake circles. You know, and why shouldn't you, especially around the holidays or around the winter season, cut out snowflakes the old school style, trace them onto your backing, and make this exact same rug. I mean, it's just what it looked like. Somebody folded a paper into eighths or more and cut away with a little pair of scissors and came up with this really extraordinary rug. Oh, wrong page. Really extraordinary rug. There we go. And the one under it is another one that I put up for tonight. I think I called it, I can't remember what I called it. You'll see it there. It's one of the 4 links in the description for tonight. I thought it was another really exquisite example of a hearth rug with a really unusual bouquet. It's got both grapes, so fruits, and are grapes fruits or are grapes actually vegetables because they have seeds, right? That's probably one of those tricky ones. But in any case, it has grapes, it's got flowers, it's got an urn design, it's got sort of trumpet flowers, roses, what look like carnations. It's got a lot going on. But I think it's an exceptional, not quite symmetrical, which gives it added beauty and interest. I think it's an exceptional example of an early bouquet design. Or urn design or basket design or whatever you want to call it. Hey, do you want to call it, Carol, are you on? Do you want to call it a colonial porch design? Why not, right? We can call it whatever we want to. It is beautiful, right, Kira? These are, I mean, one page, we get 2 home runs on that page. The snowflakes and that beautiful urn. This is I was, again, fooling with the lines, but this is the close-up of that picture. I just think this is, I think, a hole or a mistake or something, but that's, I don't think that's an intentional part. This is also something you could put ears on the vase. You could customize it with some little ears. You could really make it your own. You could put your initials on the vase. You could put the year on the vase. So many things you can do with these antique designs. They really lend themselves to customization. So he talks a lot in the first chapters about the history of rug hooking, and he will talk about faraway places. He will talk about Scandinavia, the British Isles, Egypt. He'll talk about thrummers and sailors and all that stuff that we've talked about a lot. So I'm not going to go into huge detail, but I will just tell you it is, it's super, sounds patronizing, but super quaint. It's a very good read. It's very interesting, and these early chapters are loaded with pictures. Every one of these pictures is amazing. This is another one that I did that's up there. I think I called this one Thistle and Hex. This is extraordinary. This is extraordinary. If there's one thing Kent does better than anybody in this book, it's showing us photographs of rugs that are all unique and different. There's not one rug in this book that is boring. There's not one rug in this book that looks like any rug I've ever seen before, with the exception of the Waldeboros. These are exceptional rugs. So take a look at this. This one I call in Ribbon Candy Hooking Thistle and Hex, because if you can see, again, another small plate, but there's only 2 designs here. There's like a floral that looks like a thistle, and then there's the double heart, like the Pen Dutch heart that is often used as a hex on barns. You know, the big round painted stuff. But they alternate. Now, with a design like this, you could equally, and why shouldn't you, you don't have to use 2 designs. You could use initials, you could use family pets, you could use birth flowers, your birth flower, your child's birth flower, grandchild's, sisters, cousins. You could use zodiac symbols, Chinese zodiac symbols. You could do anything. You know, it could be a real mishmash of pictures. But in this case, they've only used 2. It gives it a lot of symmetry. It gives it a lot of weight and balance using just 2. Because, of course, it's like a checkerboard. Everything alternates, and it comes out beautifully balanced. But if you like this kind of design, all you need to do is draw a square, get a bunch of paper plates, and draw a bunch of circles in it. And in each circle, you do something that you like. If you can't think of enough things to do and you want a lot of circles, maybe do a heart or do the Pen Dutch, you know, 2-way heart, 4 hearts. In every other one, and then stagger by doing unique things on the odd ones. But a great design, certainly a one-of-a-kind, non-commercial, homemade original pattern by somebody somewhere a lot of years ago. And it would still be a winner if you did it this weekend. So that's something to think about. So let's see, what else is he's got so much to say, it's crazy.
He talks a little bit about proddy rugs, and he won't call them proddy. He'll call them broddy with a B, B-R-O-D-D-Y, or broaded. Again, this is a word where the language has shifted over generations. Even within Britain, this word has shifted many times. So broddy, proddy, we keep changing it. It's a moving target, but it's all the same rug. It's when you push through a pegged rug is something that's also been called historically. It's when you push through very, very, very big pieces with a prodding tool, certainly not a hook, because you can tell by the sort of running stitch on the back. They've probably pushed it through with a prod, like a stick, like a pointed stick, angled or shaped stick to get the really large pieces through a much looser backing than we would be using right now. But that is a prodded rug. He shows examples of those too and includes them as hooked rug examples. Lots of these, I gotta stop and do some commentary, but this is another great example of two beautiful small rugs. Who knows what these were for? These were not hearth rugs, but again, how different are these early rugs? It almost looks like an interstellar party, like particularly this one, like a crazy galaxy of motion and movement around a simple wreath, right? And a very simple motif, almost like an architectural, like a ceiling tile, right? Something that you would find a chandelier coming out of the center of. This one too, very similar design, handled differently, almost interchangeable, same size, roughly, but there's so much movement in these. I think part of the reason there's so much movement is because this is not store-bought fabric. People are using bits and bobs and scraps, and they're not continuing with the same colors they started with. So they are forced to do color change. They are forced to do unintentional shading. And as a result, you get this magical, mystical, it's like fairy dust, movement, fairy dust right across the whole thing. Again, age too, I'm sure has faded some of these natural dyes. This is another great example. This is I think the last, no, I did one more after this. I did this one too, and I think I called, God, I don't remember what I called this one. No, I didn't do this one. I didn't do this one, but I should have, and maybe I will. Early American Unshared Hearth Rug. This is just, I just love these early rugs. I've never seen anything like what he's showing us. It looks like an applique quilt, right? I mean, beautiful dark background. That's an extraordinary amount of dark to begin with. Beautiful basket. It's not a snorer. It's not going to put you to sleep. This is a really wacky basket. Very, very unbalanced, and yet it works. That one willowy sweep on this side with a few like long petaled flowers of some sort. Look at that basket. It's just like spotted with cotton ball type flowers stacked right up on top of each other like an ice cream sundae. And then off on the side, I'm guessing they sort of ill-judged the placement of the basket because it's way far over, it's off center. And I think as a result, on the other side, they tried to make a deliberate balance of a lot of small floral spray bouquets. And it does balance. It adds a lot of weight, very, very small, a different scale. Whenever you introduce a different scale, you're introducing interest. It's making you think. It's making you stop and look. I can't imagine what size cut that is either. I don't think it's that small, though, I have to say. Let's see what size the rug is. I don't think they could cut that small. They were like cutting and ripping. 44 inches by 27, so that's a good size. Yeah, I really don't think it's that small. It has a lot of that wacky, wavy motion in it, which makes me wonder if this is indeed, 1825 is the year on this, if this is indeed, again, I'm harking back to the last coffee time, a hooked rug or a shirred rug. Remember with shirred rugs or penny rugs, they would take a shape, like for example in the penny rug, a circle, and they would fold it into quarters, and on just the bottom of it, like the ice cream cone tip, they would sew that to the backing and then sew many right close to it. So there'd be so many close to each other, they'd stand up and they'd cover the rug with it like artificial grass, right? All standing up. It could be that this is that, because you do get a lot of those very wavy lines that you get in a cut rug. It's not really cut. You're seeing the ends of it because there never were any loops because it's not hooked. That's a possibility with this rug. It's just a possibility. But he's showing us a lot. He's giving us a lot of food for thought. That's for sure. He's showing us lots of examples of extraordinary early rugs. You know, this is the hooked rug book. The next book that I'll cover is going to be the rare hooked rug book. And to be honest, I haven't even opened this book. The examples that I'm seeing in the first book, that's not the rare rugs, these are blowing my mind. These are changing my life. These are completely different hooked rugs, different than I've ever seen before. And if these are just the regular ones and the next book are the rare ones, I can't even imagine. I'm going to have to take a sedative before I crack that one open. That will not be a bedtime book for me. That will get me going. Now, this is another interesting example. Again, a beautiful early pattern, but doesn't this look like two chair pads? You know, do you have any chair pad designs that you're just like, I'm not in love anymore, I probably ain't going to do it? Why not put two of them together in one composition? All they did was one little scroll-like fern, top and bottom, not particularly effective, but you know what? It kind of is. It kind of is. One of the little chair pad shapes is a little bit bigger than the other. They are pretty much the same. I think what they probably did was just draw the same design, couldn't think of anything else, and they doubled up. And then they, realized they had a lot of empty space top to bottom, so they added little fern. They were looking and thinking about rugs that they had seen before that were probably commercial patterns with these absolutely effortless, perfect feathery scrolls, and then they put those little things in. But again, I would take this over one of the others any day of the week. This is so special and different. Why shouldn't you do something like this? Take two of the same pattern that you like, round, put them together like that, and put it in a composition like that. What a great idea. I'll show you one more time. What a great idea. What a lot of fun. So then he goes on to say, okay, now here we go. This is a clue that he's second guessing himself in the first chapter. He concludes the first chapter by saying, "It is indeed strange that there is no literature in England on the hooked rug, as made by sailors, cottagers, and others, but the fact that the craft was never widely developed there must be the reason for this lack of interest. It would seem worthwhile even now to take up in England the further study of its beginnings," because he does believe it's British Isles, like, origins, and development, at least in conjunction with other in commercial rug making to which it has led. The past neglect of it is strange in a land which has concerned itself wonderfully with the arts and crafts of other countries. In other words, he's saying, how can this be in England, a country that has so well documented every art and craft? How could they have originated an original form of a craft, given it up for lack of interest, not documented at all, and to this day, even he himself says there is no literature in England on the hooked rug. Like, there's nothing written about it. So this is a clue, this sort of sentiment, at the first chapter is called Origins, chapter 1, that he's questioning the origins a little bit, or at least maybe he truly in earnest is finding it hard to believe that he's very unlucky and he hasn't found anything about rug hooking, early rug hooking in England. In any case, the reason is because, we know now that it started in North America, either the maritime provinces or in northern New England. But he is questioning the oddness, the curiousness of not finding anything when he's looking for it. So he talks about other kinds of rugs, like the locker hooked rug. We've touched on this a few times, and this is a completely different kind of rug. A locker hook looks like a crochet hook, but on the knot hook side, on the other side, the tail side, it has an eye like for a tapestry needle, a giant eye for a giant needle. It's one tool. He says the locker hooked rug, so he's classifying the locker rug as a category of hooked rug. Of course it's not, because it's not a hook, it's a locker hook. It's a completely different implement. The locker hook is done on a large mesh canvas with a hook which has an eyelet on one end into which a thread of thick yarn or string is inserted. The worker then hooks up from beneath the canvas as many loops as the hook will hold, pulls the thread through the whole lot, and the looped pile is then locked on top. The canvas cannot possibly be pulled back through, which is the failing of the old-fashioned hooking method. In other words, that the loops could come through a really loose backing. So he's considering the locker hook drug to be kind of an improvement or the next evolution of a hook drug. So I think we absolutely at this point make a distinction between a locker hook drug and a hook drug. There's also going to be a lot of patterns. He's not familiar with quilt patterns. This would not sort of hit his radar in terms of interest. I can see how rugs would be interesting to an architect, but quilts are not, because he's able to identify in hooked rugs quilt-inspired patterns, like the log cabin is the one he can identify, but he's not able to identify any others. When he sees like something that is clearly based on a quilt pattern, he calls it something else, and he doesn't use the language that would signify that he knows what the lingo is in quilting language. So that comes up a lot too, and that can be confusing. This is part of the reason why the history of anything, including crafts, maybe especially crafts, is confusing, because the language changes over time. What I was saying earlier, making the reference to the colonial porch pattern that Carol started researching, in one of our early books from the 1920s, that rug hooking book, many cocktail nights ago, she refers to a floral bouquet pattern as being a colonial porch pattern. And it could be that it's framed out and it's meant to be a bouquet sitting on a porch. It could also be that it was a phrase that was used in those days and the language has changed over time. And because there's not a lot written on hooked rugs, as things go, there's a handful of books, but over the course of many decades, that's not a lot. It's a drop in the ocean. Because there's a lack of written information about rug hooking in 1920s, 1930s, it is possible that the language changes often, and for that reason, it's hard. It's like trying to catch a cat by the tail, a tiger by the tail. It's harder to do than it seems. And he really suffers from this in this book. Now, this top design, which he's not referring to as a log cabin, he's referring to it as an agate design, like agate stone. If you look at this close up, I would again really argue that this is a shared rug, that this is a yarn sewn rug, because of the wavy quality of the lines. I really, 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 I wish I could see the back of this rug. I'm sure the whereabouts are probably unknown, but I would love to see the back of it, because I would fully expect to find stitches rather than like the backs of loops. It's an agate rug, and I think, again, he's referring to the agate stone, like the waviness of it, but I think it's because there's a chance it's not a hooked rug. It's one of the many. And isn't it fun to look at a book like this with the knowledge that we now have, that we've gathered doing this together for months and months? It's fun to look at a book like this and say, you know what, I have a different opinion on that. And without looking at it in person, we can't qualify any of our opinions. But isn't it fun to try? It's fun to feel like an expert on something sometime. But, sooner or later, even if it's like a shot in the dark, what's the saying? A broken clock is still right twice a day. You can be right. You can look at a photo this big and go, yeah, I don't think that's a hooked rug. And you might be right. I really feel this isn't a hooked rug. I have no idea if I'm right, and I'll never know. But maybe I'll dream about it. So this is interesting. In this chapter, he's still talking about the history of the hooked rug. And, because he believes that hooked rugs are from the British Isles. Cheers, everybody. Oh, hey, Anita. Oh, hey, Carol. You can catch up, Carol. Oh, I still have forgotten to look at the picture. Oh, my gosh. I have to look at the picture. You were with Robin, right? Carol and Robin got together, and I got a picture, and I have to pull it up on my email. I love it when people get together. What's that thing that Jane Austen said? Something like, nice people. Isn't it nice when good people get together, and they always do? I think that was it. It refers to like having things in common. You find each other, right? It's always interesting and fun to find someone like you. So because he believes that rug hooking is from the British Isles, I don't know how much of a shot in the dark his letter writing is, but he writes a letter to somebody who's called Mr. J.C. Moreland of Glastonbury. I think Glastonbury is where Stonehenge is, that part of England. So this is the letter that Mr. Moreland has written back to Kent. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but this is the gist of it. Oh, how nice, Carol. This is the gist of it. He says, Dear Mr. Kent. Now, Mr. Moreland is a little bit pretentious too, right? It's this kind of a thing again. So fasten your seatbelt, Robin. He says, Dear Mr. Kent, your letter was sent to Mr. J.C. Moreland, by, I think, an antique dealer in Preston, Lancashire. So he wrote to somebody in Lancashire, like the county. For some reason, he targeted a specific antique dealer who forwarded the letter to this Mr. Moreland. And he says, Mr. Moreland says, I fear it is unlikely we can tell you much about these rugs because rugs are not held in reverence in this country, and no one has troubled to look it up. Nor do I think it is likely that people will have preserved any old ones to any great extent. That's the first paragraph. But knowing this North Country England as well as I do, and South Scotland is also very well, I am quite sure they must have been going from at least Tudor times. You can deduce a good deal from the fashion of houses. So what he's saying basically is there's a lot of Tudor houses here, from the Tudor period. It seems like there'd be hooked rugs in them. It's just it's not quite evidence, is it? It's a little bit interpretive. It's a little bit subjective. His feeling that a Tudor house should have a hooked rug certainly doesn't mean that there are hooked rugs from the Tudor period. I don't know, but I have been to a lot of Tudor houses in England, like Hever Castle, Anne Boleyn's Castle, and a lot of the residences that are associated. I sound like Kent now. That are associated with Elizabeth, and her dad Henry, but I have to say that I associate, when I think about touring those places, the textiles are tapestries. You rarely even see needlepoint. You see embroidery and tapestry at this point. I can't say I've ever seen a hooked rug in an English castle from this period. But again, who am I to say? It's just the sort of tone of this letter is not very conclusive. He's speaking as if he's very authoritative because he knows England and Scotland very, very well. But he does not know about rugs, and he doesn't believe that anybody's kept the rug. So again, we're hitting kind of a dead end here. Hello, Lisa. Oh, that's her. Oh, the electricity is out. High winds. It's crazy times here too. So I'm sitting in the house, and the kids are out on the trampoline because I was too scared to stay at my studio because the ceiling tiles were like shifting and dancing. And I thought, oh great, if the roof blows out, that's a hell of a way to end it, right? But I get so scared now I have kids. I just was like, be home where the kids are just in case something crazy happens from the Wizard of Oz. But so far so good. So this is the kind of thing, this is the reason he's doing the best he can to gather. And he's writing letters to people. It makes perfect sense to write letters to antiquarians and people who are in the business. It makes perfect sense to do that. They're writing back stuff to him that very, very sort of flimsy. And he accepts it because it's information, and there is no other information. He's basing a lot of what he writes on letters like this. That's my point. And that's the reason why, at the end of the day, we're able to sort of disqualify a lot of these lines of thought, a lot of these avenues, and say, well, that's not the way that we found it to be in the end. But you can fully understand and appreciate why he would have approached writing the way that he did, because there were no other options. And good for him for firing off a bunch of crazy cold call letters to random people on another continent in the 1920s, right? Because this book came out in 1930. Good for him for doing that, because I know I've tried to do that. Nobody ever answers me. So, I think it's extraordinary the amount of work that he did. And this is all part of a very quaint story. Again, it sounds patronizing, but isn't it quaint reading about all of these efforts he took to get us this information? He was curious and passionate about it. He went through a lot of trouble. He was, I'm sure, a very busy architect. He went through a lot of trouble to put this information together. It's not a small book. And he did really well. Again, I'm not being patronizing. So the designs as a whole, this is the guy still talking in the letter, the designs as a whole are not of a high order and are not rug designs, and are not usually the best, adjusted to the limitation demanded by the method of working, meaning like hooking it on your lap. The district, which again they weren't, the district where I find these rugs indigenous is, roughly speaking, where the Scandinavian Scots live. So here's a twist, which was once the kingdom of Strathclyde and reached from Lanarkshire southwards towards Morecambe Bay in Galloway, and Stewartry of Kirkcudbright. So he's really targeted areas. There has always been this connection between the possibility of early rugs in Scandinavia. So now he's tying them to the Scots because, of course, he knows Scotland very well. Who knows if there is anything here? There might be something here. We might yet find another page of history turns and that the pendulum swings backward and it turns out it is the Scandinavian Scots. That is not what we believe it to be at this moment, but stranger things have happened, right? He says, I see no reason to discredit the theory that they were probably introduced by Scandinavian settlers hereabouts. The names of people and of natural features in old household words are strongly Scandinavian. So again, he's basing rug designs and names of rugs, their sort of language associations to, I think Scandinavians speak something that's akin to, isn't it Polish? I know there's Poland and one of the Scandinavian countries have an almost identical language, which makes no sense because they're about as far as they can be. And one is like on an island and one is continental. But I know there's like a link there with like one of the Scandinavian languages, and I think it is, but in any case, it doesn't matter. Language is language, and there is no proof in England that there have been hooked rugs at that period. And he slammed into a wall and trying to sort of pursue that avenue. So it didn't stop him. He kept going. There's a whole series of letters. This one woman, A. Macbeth, right? I assume it's a woman. I think it's a woman. Anne. Yep. She starts her letter again. He writes to another sort of random person, and about, have you seen any rugs? Do you know anything about the history of rugs in your county, kind of thing? And I'm not going to read the whole letter because it's pretty much the same. It's just kind of guesswork, and we've seen them, but people throw them out, that kind of thing. But she starts her letter by saying, first line, I have sent out a fiery cross. And that's like a clannish expression for going to war, in old England. But I just think it's funny that she started this letter with so much emotion, almost violence. I have sent out a fiery cross. She was immediately passionate and interested in this quest. She actually refers to his request as a quest. And she says in this letter, and this is just a side note, but it's so cute. She says, that she has honored his quest by forwarding it to a lot of other people. So she breaks up the in the quest and she turns it into a real sort of pilgrimage to get to the bottom of this mystery. I think that is so, so, so sweet. Now, he talks a lot about geometrics in this book. And I guess the reason why in Shetland they have tated rugs. Very interesting. Christine, I'm going to have to look that up. I don't know that word. I'm going to have to check that out. You know what? This brainstorming is great, isn't it? Because maybe Christine knows something that's going to link to this book, that's going to link us back to the UK. Wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be funny? That'd be so exciting. But he talks, William Winthrop Kent talks so much about geometrics in this book. That's his particular passion. If he sees a basket of flowers, he's probably not going to like it. He's going to consider it clumsy, naive. But if he sees a geometric, he typically loves it. I don't know if it's because it's sort of a more male or a more generic subject, or if it's because he's an architect and he loves lines and angles and shapes. I don't know, but he shows us so many great geometrics in this book that, I just could look at just the geometrics for weeks and study them. These are all, again, small plates. These are runners, making it even more hard to see. But you can see one of them that's toward the spine of the book, the center, is almost a Moorish type tile pattern. The one on the far side is almost like a sort of Native American or an ethnic kind of zigzag. And the one in the middle is a kind of checkerboard. It does have a very European feel. And then these over here have more of an early American feel. We get what looks like almost a clover design, like a good luck kind of a clover design or spade kind of thing going. It's got that hex thing again, like with the hearts, the sort of Escher-typed, tessellated flipping of the same shape to create a pattern. I can see why that would appeal to an architect, right? Can't you? And this one here is quite interesting at the bottom. I hope that's in focus. It's hard for me when I'm standing right up against the camera. The thing for me about this bottom one, we've got these very, very Tudor flowers, right? This is like the Tudor rose, classic. You see this mostly in carving, wood carving, at the ends of pews, like the end caps on pews, things like that. But you're seeing it here, very, very simple stylized graphic. But what's so interesting is this crazy,
crazy sort of peppermint zigzag striping that goes in the crisscrosses of it. That is remarkable. I mean, do you find that I find that remarkable. That is so much work. So much work being put into the geometry part of the rug rather than the floral part of the rug. And, you know, he refers often in this book to men hooking. And, you know, I wonder how many of these pieces, particularly the geometrics, are hooked by men because they have a really masculine flavor for sure. So, you know, and then he's showing us full rooms. And I have to say, I really appreciate the full room pictures he's showing us because I have not seen so many full room pictures since like Nutting, right? Wallace Nutting, who gave us all the photography. We did a coffee time about that ages ago, how he created the colonial American look. And it was not colonial at all. None of the interiors were colonial, right, Kira? That piece was incredible. You know, he's showing us his view, his romantic 20th century view of what colonial interiors look like. The same kind of thing is happening here. These are staged photos that Kent is showing us, but I know that's so much work. Kira, you do so much work in your rug, so what are you talking about? You do so much work. You know hard work. Now look at this one he's showing us. This is definitely staged, and the reason you can tell is because you see the same furniture in different pictures with different rugs. So, you know, who cares? But he's again showing us, you know, if this was a bed and breakfast, wouldn't you crawl across the country, you know, with your fingernails in the dirt, dragging yourself to get to it, to sleep in this room? I mean, I know I would. Beautiful high boy, you know, the big armchairs. Look at that gorgeous chaise where you could put your hooking on your lap, and look at these gorgeous hooked rugs. Canopy bed. Oh, God, you know. If only bed and breakfasts look like this now, even the really expensive ones. You get such garbage from Home Goods at the bed and breakfast. It's like, you know, when you're spending $300 a night, I want some hooked rugs on the floor. I would like a high boy, and I would like a chaise, and I would like an early American basket to throw yarn balls in. But you just don't get that anymore, do you? And if you do get it, tell me where, because I will crawl across the U.S. with my fingernails in the dirt to find the place where I can have that. So he gives us a lot of these beautiful full room vignettes, and they're full of information. He really creates, I don't think that he staged them, but I think he finds these interiors. I think he's, you know, hobnobbing, elbowing with this class of people who have these beautiful homes and summer homes that are really laden with early American stuff, including hooked rugs. And so he's able to take a lot of great photographs or have them done, and we have the benefit of seeing them. So, so let's see. Chapter 3, The Simplicity of the Process. Oh, this is a gem. This is a gem. I probably shouldn't spend time on this, but it is Friday night, right? And I hope you're all relaxing and having a drink too. Now, the simplicity of the process. I have to say, I'm joking. This is like a tongue-in-cheek. I have to say, if you ever feel like you are getting too big for your britches and you need to be taken down many pegs, then read chapter 3 of this book about the simplicity of the process. Because when you read his description of how to rug hook, I mean, for myself, I felt like the most inadequate boob who had ever been born. It is so complicated, his description of just the simplicity of it, the very basics. Just you simply do this and you are now a rug hooker. I'm just going to read excerpts for you because it's just astonishing. It's a reminder that people who lived in the 1920s and 1930s were so much more capable than I am with everything. This is what I mean. First sentence. The entire process of making a hooked rug is as follows. First, buy or make a hook. That's it. So, you know, he tells you in the next chapter how you may like hollow out the shank, how you may file down the point of it, you know, of your tip, your metal tip. It is best for a beginner to make a hook of a medium size. He doesn't describe this in inches and size in anything. He just uses the word medium. Of a medium size to catch strips of woolen or cotton cloth about 1/4 of an inch wide or more, according to the thickness of the cloth. Did you hear the sentence that I just said? I mean, that to me, that sentence makes no sense. It's best for a beginner to make a medium-sized hook to catch strips of woolen or cotton cloth about 1/4 of an inch wide or more,
according to the thickness of the cloth. I would have, for myself, I would have to sit there and read that thousands of times, and I still wouldn't know what size that was. But I guess if you were living in the 1920s and 30s, you maybe would know. Set the iron part into the handle so that the entire implement will not be over 5 inches long. So there we go. There's our gauge. And then he goes on to say, and then make a frame similar to an embroidery frame, but in 2 pieces, A and B, called spreaders. And do it of maple or white wood, at least 1.5 inches thick and about 52 inches wide. And then he goes on to talk about how you need to make a groove in each end to resist strain, and then how you fit in the end pieces, which are C and D, and how you slide them into the grooves that you've made. I mean, this is like, are you kidding me? It goes on and on and on. It's really something else. He does mention that Ralph Burnham sells frames, so that's something that I didn't know. I knew about him having the patterns, having copying patterns, made patterns available, repairing, restoring, all that stuff, but I did not know that he manufactured frames. That's interesting. I have not read that yet anywhere. We will return to the making of the rug hooking, but I want to show you a couple more pictures that he shows us. I just think these are just extraordinary. Come a little bit closer. I mean, do you want to enter into this room in the early morning with a cup of coffee and not leave for like 5 years? Right in the window with all that beautiful colored glass, that little alcove next to the radiator. Look at those hooked rugs on the ground and that old door, the old plank door, little silhouettes on the wall. Wouldn't you love that? I mean, it just looks like heaven, these houses. And this book tells you, let me see if this is in focus, I'm sorry. Pretty good. This is a much bigger room, bigger scale. This looks, this looks remarkably like the set for Christmas in Connecticut, the movie. That looks remarkably like that. You know what, I'm going to have to check that one. That looks like a sneaky deaky. That looks just like it. Wouldn't that be funny? No, Christmas in Connecticut was 1946, I think, so that's impossible. Unless it was really a house, right? God knows. But anyway, so he's showing us lots of beautiful interiors. I would love that too, Kira. I would love that. Here, one more. Let me show you one more. He's showing us this interior. Okay, this is the interior of the Theodore Bodwin Esquire house in New London, Connecticut. He says it shows the effective use of geometrical hooked rugs with a trestle table, Lancashire chairs, wall boarding, blah, 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 all kinds of early American touches. It's like a faux colonial house. And this is in New London, Connecticut. I find that amazing. New London is not, one of these sort of, anymore, one of these beautiful historic towns anymore. But again, geometric rugs. Now, are you thinking what I'm thinking when you look at this picture? This is the dining room, and they're showing us geometric rugs. So to know how over and over and over, all of the sources that we've read in coffee time, old sources, new sources, repeatedly have told us that geometric rugs were not used anywhere but the kitchen and upstairs where company wouldn't see them. In this picture, the geometric rugs are being used in the dining room. Now, is that going to be, does that mean that it dismisses or cancels out the idea that we've always had that geometrics are not used in rooms where company would come? Does that cancel that out, or does it just mean that this person in this house liked geometrics as much as Kent? Or that maybe the rugs were scattered there to stage the photograph because they were Kent's taste, also possible. It's hard to say. You have to remember that at this point, in this year that this book was written, that Art Nouveau came before, right? The arts and crafts movement. This is arts and crafts time. The Art Nouveau movement came immediately before it. And when you think of, the Art Nouveau, when you think about Art Nouveau, you think about Mucha, you think about old French posters for absinthe, super floral patterns, layered shapes, floral, very ornate floral. You cannot leave the florals out. And then the pendulum swings and you're in the arts and crafts movement and you've got very wood, very bare, very geometric. It's the absolute opposite. That might be the reason we're seeing geometrics in the dining room. because this wouldn't be the original placement, 19th century sort of mentality of where you put the best rugs. So that photo brings up a lot of questions for me. My personal assumption would be that because this is now the arts and crafts period, the geometric rugs are more desirable than the floral rugs, and that's the reason they're in the dining room. But your guess is as good as mine with everything that we talk about on Coffee Time. He talks about the easiest and quickest way for those who can afford a small outlay is to buy a frame and follow the directions for putting it together. And then, here it comes, just as easy as this. Then you cut up a new potato or feed sack, which is burlap, or better, if you can find better. He doesn't say what better is, but or better. And then if you have a new coffee sack, that's a good basis for a strong, coarsely hooked rug. Next, obtain the design of a rug in color on a small scale. This could be a tough one for rural people, right? And decide how large you want the full-size finished rug to be. And then stencil or draw it onto the burlap in black or any good color. Teddy, I just want to remind you I'm recording, baby. Do you want to say hi? Oh, Teddy's going to say hi for a second.
Hi.
Did you have fun on the trampoline?
Yeah.
Yeah? Oh, you little one. So, okay, so then you have to figure out how big you want it, and then he doesn't tell you how you scale it, and he doesn't tell you how you transfer it, but just, figure it out. Please don't play TV in there, Ted. I'm recording. And you transfer it in black or any good color. So, and then you tack it down after, and here it comes, brace yourself, after dampening it. So make sure that you wet your burlap, and then because it becomes more pliable and stretchy, and then you stretch it over the frame. Remember, the problem with burlap is it rots when it's wet. So that's a rough one. But that is part of the instruction for getting started. He wants you to turn the ends 2.5 inches over. Now your burlap probably isn't sealed on the edge and it wants to unravel. 2.5 inches is not a lot. I always put 4 inches on every side of my pattern, just in case you want to add something or just so you have room, to think. But 2.5 is not very much, and considering that you have already wet it, I can see why a lot of edges of rugs look the way that they look. Partly because of wear, and probably partly because they've been wetted and stretched who knows how many times. Now, I'm keeping my eye on the time too, because I'm about halfway through what I wanted to do tonight. My mouth is running too much. He shows us some other rugs that I think are just, you really have to get this book, right? The reading can be tough. It can be off-putting for sure. But you really have to get this book because the examples in here are just crazy. He shows us an example of what he considers to be a New Hampshire rug. He calls it a piece of great beauty. Now, I'm thinking this hits a lot of his sweet spots. I'm going to show it to you the way that he's showing it. It is an extraordinary rug that is a fusion of a floral and a geometric. So he's got to be pleased with this one. Now, look at how difficult this rug is. The center is really, really heavy, very painterly, flower upon flower. It's very, very heavily patterned. On the edge, it appears to me, and I certainly cannot tell by looking at a photo this size, it appears to me that it's actually hooked on the diagonal. You would certainly want to hook this many squares, on the square, up and down the weave, but it doesn't look like it is. It looks like it's flatly on the diagonal. That would be such a hard hooking job. But besides the technical difficulties of executing something like this with the tools that one would have had, this is an extraordinarily beautiful piece. You've got to say, whatever your tastes are, to see this proportion of floral framed by this much geometric, that is a gorgeously balanced piece. I think the proportion is absolutely perfect. I have never seen that heavy a geometric border on a floral piece. It's almost like a rug within a rug, like a Russian nesting doll again. I think it's exquisite. Oh, thanks, Kira. He's so cute. He's not particularly shy. He's just so immediately bored, He's just like, I'm done, going upstairs. He hits on a category of rug that he will call threshold rugs. These are rugs we now call welcome mats. So this is another great example of how language changes. Threshold rugs. And he He's funny. He's very harsh. He shows us this one first, the top one, and he says it's very small because it's excellent because it's small and still has great detail. The second one of kitty cats, he shows us. He says, that it's quite good despite the coarse whiskers on the kitty cat. The big kitty has some whiskers, some articulated little whiskers in there, and they are just black lines. But he says, it's good just in spite of these coarse whiskers. Again, he's looking at everything with the eye of an art critic, and folk art doesn't work like that. So it's just a tough approach. He shows us some other pieces of contemporary history, circa 1930, that are extraordinary. He's showing us a rug that cost $475, right? Like, you could buy like a fur coat for $40 at this point in history. $475. So bought, there's a typo here, he says brought, but bought for $475 at the American Art Association in New York. It doesn't sound like the place you'd go if you didn't have any cash in your pocket. In 1930, this is a cluster of roses, lilies, and other flowers at the center, surrounded by a wreath of the same flowers on a brownish black field. That sounds like antique black. It's not a perfectly round rug, again, finishing a rug would be hugely hard back in the day, making it perfect. But obviously the rug does have something. It has a naive quality that we would certainly qualify as folk art now. But he must have found it astonishing that this was worth $475. I think even Kent would say that this has the look, that this is not a commercial pattern, that this has some of the heart, some of the personality of the maker that he really longs to see. He believes if the piece does not have technical greatness, it really better have the heart and personality of the maker, because he will also be looking for that. That was just an extraordinarily expensive piece. He shows us other work. He considers this either Eastern Maine or Canada. Something like this, you rarely see something like this. Put aside everything that you think about scrolls and then look at this. I mean, these are heavy scrolls. These are enormous scrolls. Would you ever attempt to sit down and create a composition, particularly a round composition, that had a tiny sort of paperweight of florals in the middle that look like millefiori, and then fill the rest of your empty space with giant fat scrolls? I would never in a million years attempt this, but you know what? This looks fantastic. I absolutely love the composition. It really, really has something. This is like every paperweight I see in an antique store that I would love, that makes me go, oh, I need to start collecting paperweights. And then you look and it's the only one that costs $500 and all the rest of them cost $15. It looks just like that. This also looks like it's possibly a Waldoboro rug, but we're getting there. We're getting there with that. Now, I'm going to show you another rug because he shows us, again, thank God for these books, because he has documented these rugs. And again, I'm sure most of these rugs are just not available anymore. It would be very hard to trace them. I know even with fine art and important art, like my sister, who works at Yale, they have such a hard time finding paintings that they knew where they were in 1970. She's constantly, every time we go antiquing, she's looking through, if she sees auction catalogs or brochures that you get from historic houses, that kind of thing, anywhere in the world. She's always flipping through them because they always show the art. And she says once in a while, she goes, oh my God, there's a Vermeer, not a Vermeer because there's not many of those, but there's a piece of work that they've been looking for, or an artist, and she goes, how did it get to that house? The last time we knew where it was in Australia. Now it's, it was in this house in 1980. And it's just amazing how people don't have to record these things. It's not like abducting a child or something when you move a piece of art from your residence to your new residence, but it does make it very hard to trace these things. And certainly rugs that were not held in high regard would be even harder to trace. So he's showing us photographs of things that we would otherwise never be able to see. A lot of these photographs, this particular one is from B. Altman, right, the department store. So they sold rugs, and this is one of the rugs that they sold. they were selling this rug, right? It's a large rug. It's 14 feet by 14 feet. B. Altman was selling this rug in 1930 for $15,000. I mean, it is a gorgeous, gorgeous rug. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money. I mean, isn't that, again, not a commercial pattern? This is such an old rug. This to me looks like a mid-19th century work of love. Somebody who was working on it for years and years for a home that they loved. And this is the result. Beautiful wreath. And again, a little bit of trouble with proportion, the top and the sides. There wasn't quite enough room left on the bottom. This must have been hard with a rug this size. This must have been hard without modern tools and rulers that telescope and things that really measure, or lasers. Forget it. It's not going to be perfect, and it shouldn't be perfect. But that is just one of the many extraordinary things that he shows us. This chapter, he talks about dyeing. And he's borrowing a lot of information from other writers of dyeing, particularly Douglas Leachman, who is very well known for doing early 20th century books on dyeing. He's done at least 2, and he did a number of magazine articles. His information is very good. And you know what? It's the same information we have today. The same fruits, vegetables, leaves, nuts make the same colors they did in the early 20th century and the 19th century. So it's kind of funny that it's all the same info, but I do have some of the Douglas Leachman. And the article that he mentions, Magic Dyes of the Olden Days, that's from the American Home magazine. I'm looking for that now because the only copy I can find is insanely expensive. So I'm looking for that, and if I find it, I'll share that with you. But it's basically, he's referring to Leachman's information. He's referring to Helen Albee's information because, of course, she did a lot of natural dyeing with her Abenaki rugs. And somebody that I've never heard of before, again, something so great about these older books, Charles E. Pellew, Pellew, Dyes and Dyeing. He wrote that. So I would be really interested in finding that and reading what he had to write about dyeing. He borrows Leachman's information by going color to color and saying, listen, if you want black, you use alder, poison ivy, sumac, walnut. If you want orange, you use, again, alder. Bittersweet, dodder. I don't know what dodder is. Sassafras, young walnut. Yellow adder's tongue. I also don't know what that is. I'm not much of a gardener, but I'm hoping these are plants and not actually tongues. If you want blue, you go for grape or larkspur, oak, spruce bark, sycamore, toad flax. I don't know that one either, but they sound super charming. He goes through the whole list of things that you can use for different colors. Now, this is interesting. He says, and I'm reading here, most of the dyes of the olden days were prepared in very simple ways, generally by boiling the goods with parts of the dye-bearing plant. For example, the butternut was prepared by boiling the inside bark and the nut rinds with the wool, which was to be woven into homespun. Sometimes the brown was varied by adding walnut bark with black as a result. This was one of the best known and most popular dyes. So many of the Confederate soldiers were dressed in homespun colored with butternut dye. And that is why they had the name butternuts, which stuck to them for many, many, many years. Now that is interesting. I'd heard butternuts, but I did not know what the origin of that was. I thought it was like nutmegs, for Connecticut people. There was some weird insult in there, and I guess it is. But it was because they were using butternuts to dye the cloth for their uniforms. Fantastic, right? Oh, Susan, that's okay. You've had the Kent book. It is jam-packed with info. And so, you're right, Susan, so many references to the Nova Scotia rugs. And so many references to the confusion between the Acadia versus the Waldoboro rugs. That is what this book is most interesting for. Oh, I know. It's such a good book. This is another piece again, Kay Fassett. I say that name all the time. I'll have to do an episode just on him someday because some of his books include hooked rugs. Don't these look like cabbages right around the central? Very, very heavy. This is almost heading toward the Pearl McGowan school of scrolling and heavy border. But I can't imagine. I can't imagine, Lisa, 15,000 for a rug in 1930. I can't imagine that today. There's very few people I can think of that can afford that kind of expense. That's certainly the rug to buy if you can. Well, I just thought this was amazing. It has almost, remember that artist? I forget what his name is. I forget what episode I talked about him. I think it was the Patty Yoder, the sheep. That artist that used fruits and vegetables to make portraits, right? The Italian artist, you know who I mean? Who used fruits and vegetables. God, did these cabbage things ever look like that? Super realistic work of that Archibaldi, something like that. Archibaldi. God, it's crazy how these things come out of my mouth like I'm possessed. But in any case, he's going on to talk about, for example, this rug as an Acadian rug. And again, it's a Waldoboro rug. I believe it to be a Waldoboro rug. You can just tell with some of these plates that the thing is glowing, like glowing like ET, like it has a light about it that you cannot pinpoint, and it's because of the amount of raised detail, molding, modeling, shaping. Maybe it's hard to tell tonight with my lighting in the dark, but it really is glowing. You can tell that there's height and depth. And there are so many rugs in this book. He will never use the word Waldoboro, but he will use Acadian. And again, interchangeable. But I thought it's such an interesting thing to go through this book page by page to find all these examples. Think your thoughts, make the connections that you make with the information that you remember. And I do the same with the information that's in the front of my brain. We come up with all kinds of interesting thoughts, theories, and scenarios, you know. So the next chapter, I'm probably going to stop in a little while. It's getting super late. The next chapter, and this is interesting, he talks about sources and suggestions and decadence of designs, for pattern designing. So again, he brings up his friend Ralph Burnham, right? Because this is one of the heavy hitters even then. And he talks about, he says, Mr. Burnham has been in the business for 35 years, and he has seen more rugs than any man that he can think of. So the rugs that Ralph Burnham has seen include all the typical things, homesteads, huts, farmhouses, camps, settlements, all that stuff. Also geometrics. He calls them geometricals, florals, animals, landscape. There's a few words, again, language that have changed. He's using the word motives for motifs, which makes me wonder, are they not using the word motif in 1930? Because he repeatedly uses motives. He also uses a different spelling of signets, like a signet ring. He does CYGNETS. Interesting. There's a bunch of these words that really pop out because they've changed over time. And it wasn't that long ago. But he talks about how Ralph Burnham knows about these dogs, horses, cats, ducks, geese, cows, bulls, swans, cygnets, deer, poultry, sheep, foxes, lions, leopards, flower pots, baskets, vases, everything. Fireplaces, clocks, interiors, everything. And he really considers Ralph to be this like font of information, as he should, right? As he should defer to him because his business is hooked drugs. In Kent's business as being an architect, but also really a great writer and researcher. Another example of, you can't possibly say in a million years that that's not a Waldoboro rug. Again, hard to see tonight, black and white photograph while I'm in the corner of the living room, but it's a lot of raised detail. It's a lot. It's glowing. It's glowing ET style. I always think about when I feel like I'm having a bad parenting day. I always think about this thing that went around Facebook about ET that was like, maybe you saw it. It said something like, when you feel like you're a bad mom, just remember that the mom in ET had an alien living in the closet for like weeks before she even realized it. And then I think, yeah, I'm doing okay. What I'm doing is okay. I don't think there's any aliens living in the closets. It was one of those funny Facebook things. So he says, often the designs, that you find on early hooked rugs are, quote, hideous beyond belief. And of these, it is usually hard to trace their origin. It's hard to trace any of their origin. Often, too, they are of rare beauty, made evidently by people who not only knew flower forms and used color combinations with great skill and refinement, but also must have possessed much more of the patience of the Oriental. I'm using that word because it's written down, and we don't say that anymore. We try to be specific about what country a person is from because it's not that hard anymore. But that is his word. Some of these makers' names are known, but they were chiefly New Englanders and Canadians. So again, this is another hint, like he's not really turning up a lot of rugs or makers of rugs that aren't American or Canadian, but he still is believing that rugs have like an origin in the British Isles. Again, like two really direct quotes to show that he hasn't found any examples of rugs or makers who are not Canadian or American. I think that's called foreshadowing. And he shows us, you know what, I'm going to hold on that one. I'm going to hold on that one because I'll come to the end of my point here and I'm going to come back to you. I want to show you this design of this hearth rug. It's very dark, but I think it's worthwhile if you can see it at all. It's a cornucopia. It's a crossed cornucopia in the middle, and it's balanced out by two flower baskets on the sides. And it has a very, very heavy but sparse border. It's got a proportionally large border. And I think it is just gorgeous. I think it is just gorgeous. I think part of what makes it gorgeous are the cornucopias thanks Mom, are kind of pointing to the opposite flower, right? And look at the cornucopias, the way that they're crossed. And remember, as I've said before, in any composition or art history 101 book will tell you, one of the best compositions in art is the X. If you can get an X into your composition, that is great because it's going to make your eye go like this. And it does. It makes your eye go like this. And you see those crossed cornucopias with that sort of peppermint striping on them. And then it makes you look at what's on both sides of them. And over here is a flower pot, and over here is a flower pot that's a little bit different. Wouldn't that be a great composition? I would love to do something like that for Thanksgiving. Maybe a cornucopia where one of them is pointing to a basket with a turkey in it, and the other one's pointing to, I don't know, a basket with like squash or pumpkins or something. It's a great idea for a composition. It's forcing your eye to split, right? You're going to go this way, and then you're going to go that way before you forget. It's a great composition, and it's simple. And when you have, it's simple, but then you have that heavy border, and they've done a very light-hearted, very filigree floral, just one line with a few flowers here and there, and it is enough to make that thing sing. It is so good. I just want to show you one more thing. I want to tell you one more thing, and then I'm going to break because I usually stop 2 hours in. You know, okay, yeah, let's just wind this part up because he's saying, in terms of design, he's saying as in, again, I'm reading, foreign or peasant art, some chance effect or some sudden inspiration as the work progressed has given a certain remarkable quality to the homemade design. For instance, the use of familiar patterns such as hearts in a so-called wedding or courtship rug, probably one that you would get married on, triangles, stars, interlaces and circles, or a background with wavy lines, different colors, same tone, etc., soft gradations. He's saying these kinds of things cannot be bought, and this is interesting too, are not easily suggestible in a rough, stamped, or stenciled design bought at the village store. So what we're getting there is kind of a bad start to a sentence. He's talking about foreign people and peasants as being sort of interchangeable. But once we get past that, I think he's trying to refer to naive art. And again, without being able to use the label folk art, he's having a hard time. And I think it's legitimate. He's having a hard time. He's trying to describe art that is done by untrained people, and he's having a hard time finding words for it because there's an absence of words at this point. But what he is telling us is that many people are getting patterns at the local village store. Now, I mean, do you have a store that you would walk to in the center of your town where they would be selling rug hooking patterns? Because I don't. I mean, it's just such a far away thought. But he is really he's esteeming the patterns that are not bought from the village store. He is giving a lot of credit, no matter how crude or peasant the work is, he's giving a lot of credit to the designs that are not bought at the village store. And the reason I held on showing you is because he gave some examples, and that's what I'm going to end with today. The following examples are rugs that he said there is no way that these patterns were bought at the village store. These are original patterns. And for that reason, he holds them in high esteem. And this is one of them. And I absolutely agree. This is not a commercial pattern. I mean, how different is that? Right? I mean, it's so odd. It's a long, skinny hearth rug. Hey, Susie. And in the middle, we've got that sort of the little pattern of 4 flowers, different. What's cool about this is there's different flowers, but he has it split in halves. The maker has it split in halves. They've got the repeat on a different scale, much larger scale flowers around the border, 2 small ones on the side that are the same scale as the central ones. He's done a little, the maker has done a little bit of scrolling, but it is different. It is different. I have not seen a rug like this before. This is very, very different. It's almost like inverted, isn't it? Instead of having a bit of a break on the edge and having a medallion in the center, they've got the center as the break for your eye, and they've got all of the business around the edge. And one little tiny miniature pop in the center. Really, really different, right? Really different. And then he shows us this one, which I think you would also agree. This is a New England design. That's all he says. From Antiques magazine, because remember, Antiques 1920s, almost every issue has something about rug hooking because the editor's passion for rug hooking. This came out of Antiques magazine. And I think you'd agree this is not a commercial pattern. This has such a flavor of early arts and crafts. It's uncanny and incredible. These big, big, big flowers. These big flowers next to these super, super simple white flowers. The contrast is just crazy. Very simple dark border, very arts and crafts. This sort of out of focus, you got the radio on and you're in between stations, static, happening in the background. Isn't it romantic and fuzzy like a summer night? Like, I remember I once read in this collection of romantic poems about kisses and the kiss. I think it was called The Kiss. It said, kiss on the back of the knee is like a moth at the window screen. And I always think of that when I see rugs that have that really out of focus background, because it's like you see a moth at the window screen. Kiss on the knee will leave that for the imagination. But moth on the window screen, it's like this kind of fuzzy, soft noise, but all of the associations of the warm weather, the door being open, the evening, all of the associations are pleasant. And I get that same sort of staticky, fuzzy feeling when I see the background of something like this that's a little bit out of focus. There are some things in focus, like you're half falling asleep. Everything else is out of focus. And I think it's very pleasant the way that it's out of focus. So different, right? So different. And I think there was one more that he gave us. Yeah. This is the last example. Well, he probably gave us more, but they were Waldoboro, so I thought those were apples and oranges for us. Unsheared, so it's not a clipped rug, it's a looped rug. He shows us this example as a design that he considers to be not commercial. And the reason I love it is because this is a typical basket. It looks like we got some strawberries in here. Unusual scrolling on the edge. Very heavy in the veins department. I don't know if the rest of it's faded or what, but it has a very sort of neoclassical look, a very structured look. But again, the heavy lines in the veins I think are exceptional. What I think is really exceptional is that the basket looks like a watermelon. I think that is beyond charming, just beyond. It's like the moth at the window screen kind of thing. It's so different. And I would completely agree with him. This is not a doctored commercial pattern from the village store. This is an original pattern. This is from somebody's heart to the potato sack. Wouldn't that be a great title for the book? From the heart to the potato sack. Oh man, I could go on for another 2 hours, but I'm sure that would be a bad thing. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. I'm going to try to remember where we are in this book because I certainly want to come back to it. It is phenomenal. I had this much more to do with us tonight with just these little tabs here. So I didn't get very far, but I always prepare to have more info just in case for some reason it's like sands through the hourglass days of our lives. It just goes so fast that I don't have anything to say at all. So I hope you enjoyed that. This was definitely a history heavy episode. I want to remind you, I put some patterns that we have just looked at on my website, which is Ribbon Candy Hooking. They're there if you want to buy them. Of course, I love to sell stuff. That's why I do this whole business thing. They are exquisite patterns. I have at least one or two more, but we didn't get to them tonight, so I'm not going to talk about them. I'm going to leave them for next time. So I guess we'll pick this up on Monday, and I will super look forward to that then. I hope it was a good episode for you. It was a little bit hard for me getting into the book because as much as I love the work that he did, and I love the research and the photographs, love them. I love them, I would say, at least as much, if not more than any other book, because they are such exquisite early examples. The collecting and the researching that he did was phenomenal. And I guess part of the fact that he was able to do that traveling, researching, that he had the time and he had the funds to do it, is because he was successful in an upper class person. But I think also the tone of the writing is very upper class. And that's the part, for me, that's the hardest thing about this book to sort of reconcile with. Is sometimes the tone, peasants, foreigners, crude, ugly ducklings, this kind of language. It's hard for me to hear because I love all of the rugs, even the ugly ducklings. I love them all. And I love the feeling and the effort and energy behind them. But again, it's a different time, and we have Kent to thank for so much. We really do. For so much, 3 books. So we're going to absolutely go through. I'm reading the comments. Oh, thanks, Mom. Thanks, Cynthia. Oh, thanks, Jill. Robin. Oh, thank you, everybody. Yeah, I didn't know if it was too dry. I didn't know if it was too dry, but it's all important and interesting stuff. And I pre-qualified this whole thing by saying it was going to be a cozy episode, so lots of crazy talk and black and white pictures. But I want to return to this because he does have some fantastic ideas, and there are some more moth, not on the window screen. There are some more great examples of rugs that we should look at. I hope that when you go to sleep tonight, you think about like maybe designs. If you can just blank out everything about the night and the weekend and the things you need to get done. Think about some of the designs we saw, the cornucopia, the split with the open in the middle, the big flowers where some of them are huge and some of them are small, just changing the scale. Beautiful compositions, different ideas. The one at the beginning with all of those circles, just a checkerboard of circles with different pictures in each one. The one that was like the 2 chair pads with those 2 wacky scrolls, top and bottom. Lots of great ideas in this book, and we've just seen some images that if you don't have this book, you've certainly never seen before. So I hope that you enjoyed that, and I hope that you have a great weekend. I'm really looking forward to the second Magdalena class on Sunday night. That's a big group in there, and absolutely sign up if you feel like listening about Magdalena, about her life, about her rugs, her designs, her symbolism, her stories, all that kind of stuff, and a lot about composition and you getting going on some original compositions with that kind of flavor. So that will be Sunday night, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's something to sign up for on Ribbon Candy Hooking. Please like, share, comment. Check out the Facebook group this weekend. I'm going to post a blog in the morning on the Ribbon Candy Hooking page. Facebook group is Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club. If you need me, you can always write me at ribboncandyhooking@gmail.com. I'm always there. Have a great weekend. It's great seeing you all. I'm glad that you enjoyed. Thank you, Susan and Susie. And I will look forward to concluding the hooked rug on Monday at coffee time. Have a great weekend. Be happy, be safe, get some ideas going, and I will see you soon. Happy Friday. Cheers.